People gathering around the statue of Joan of Arc and releasing hundreds of balloons into the air. But are these gatherings? What will it take to turn the tide against the terrorists? Jonathan Gilliam is a former FBI special agent on the Joint Terrorism Task Force, as well as a former Navy SEAL and Federal Air Marshal. Jonathan, welcome here to the Fox News Channel. 1 million strong tomorrow, going to gather in Paris, and that's incredibly laudatory. But at the same time, we're getting disturbing reports that the two brothers, the Karachi brothers, had been under surveillance, and that surveillance dropped just in the past few months. What does that tell you?
Well, it tells me that they're making the same mistakes over there that we made with the Boston bombers. Those brothers were also, information was passed and it was dropped, and they were on different types of databases that nobody really followed up on. And when they did interview them, they were kind of let go. The same thing is happening here, almost to the letter. And I think I don't want to see France make another mistake that they made in Boston, which is as soon as the two guys were one was dead and one was caught, they just started celebrating, and there's no way to really know until you do the proper investigation if there's other people involved with this. And what just happened in France was so professionally done by these terrorists that they really need to take a pause for a moment and not put themselves out there. 1 million people would be very easy to kill a lot of people if they decide to.
Well, certainly I hope that doesn't happen tomorrow, but you raise a good point. I mean, there could be more out there. They talk about potential new attacks that they expect, basically, to happen. So what are investigators doing right now? You got the common law wife. She fled. She obviously, it seems, knew this was going to happen. So she leaves, is probably going into Syria. You're going to get a tape of her, at some point in Yemen, maybe, celebrating what happened. What do investigators do to get her? What do investigators do to try and stop another attack?
Well, first of all, you have one person right there that is bent on killing, and she's nowhere to be found. So that to me is a good example of why not to go out and celebrate tomorrow. But what police are doing right now is they're scrubbing databases. They're looking at her passport. They're looking at her past. Her past can tell a lot about what she's going to do in the future. But I'm telling you that she is a source of intelligence that is remarkable because of where they think she fled. That goes even further into telling us who's involved. And if we know Al-Qaeda in Yemen was most likely involved, but now she fled to Syria where Al-Qaeda is at, but also ISIS. The reality is these are all basically one big group, but different individuals operate differently. And we know, because we've seen, that ISIS is very brutal in what they do. I think that her associations are going to start to tell a lot about the picture of what happened and who else may be involved.
Well, you talk about who else may be involved in the associations. Can they obviously go through her phone, go through a computer? Can they do that without her and without them to try and find out? They talked about 500 phone calls, between her and the wives of one of the suspects. So, can this then expose a much broader network of radical Islamic sleeper cells, so to speak, who are there in those, no-go zones? That's astounding that they have no-go zones outside of Paris.
Well, that's where a true sleeper cell could exist. And a lot of the times, like in this case, people may use the term sleeper cell, but how can they really be a sleeper cell if they already knew about them? Who was asleep was the authorities. And that's a problem because that is a sickness that's across the board in almost every country, including our own. And an investigation, we have to look at it like a big pie, and you have different pieces of that pie. Once you get a piece, then you work that piece until you get another part of the puzzle that brings it in where you have an entire pie that you can go on and go out and make arrests and assaults. We've had several times where we've just been given a huge slice of this pie and ignored it, and that's what happened over there. And when you have zones where police authorities cannot go in and it's a closed society, the only way they're going to get information is through sources and some type of electronic data collection. And the data collection is probably a little bit more difficult than the sources, but if you're not willing to act on the intelligence that you get, it's not going to do you any good anyway.
And sadly, that all came far too late this time.
Right.
Hopefully they can stop the next one. Jonathan Gilliam, thank you so much.
Thank you.